Hi, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Align's Daily Dose of Advice, our way of bringing you valuable insights and thought leadership from business experts from around the world on various topics that hopefully you will find helpful to you and your business. As usual, my name is Eugene Turk. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Align. You can learn more about Align at aligntoday.com. My guest today is Herb Cogliano. Herb is a
Morning.
certified scaling up business coach and an experienced scaling up practitioner with more than 30 years of business experience. Herb was the former CEO of Sullivan and Cogliano, which owned and operated a portfolio of companies that provided services in technology staffing, workforce solutions, and career education throughout North America. He is now the managing partner of Aspire Growth Advisors, a boutique advisory firm in the Boston area. Herb, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Eugene, thank you very much. And it's been wonderful for my clients and me to partner with Align. And I just hope today we can bring some knowledge and insights to help fellow business owners during this very tough time. So
That
thank you again for having me.
You're welcome, and that certainly is our goal. One of the exercises that I know that you do regularly with your coaching clients is a SWAT or a sweat analysis. And for those who don't know what that is an evaluation of your company's internal strengths is the S, weaknesses is the W, versus your external opportunities, that's the O, and your threats and trends, which is the T. So with that sort of as a backdrop, Herb, from your perspective, let's first talk about strengths.
Sure.
Given this sort of new business landscape that we're currently in, the strengths that a company may have identified or sort of focused on when they were doing their annual planning in late 2019 or early 2020 may no longer be accurate. So what are your suggestions on how a company should reevaluate its strengths and the things that it does well in this sort of new business environment?
I think what's happened to a lot of business owners and companies right now is that it's important to know your strengths or core competency, but I think the frustration is the way they're putting them to use is not getting them the same results that they were getting in 2019. So I think it's really important to understand your strength. And let me give you an example. Bic company has been famous for Bic pens and shavers, but one of their core competencies is the ability to make low-cost disposable plastic items.
Mm-hmm.
And how can they take that core competency and repurpose it to an area that may need more products versus pens, but maybe there's more medical supplies that could be made in result of this current environment. I'll also tell you, think of the things that happen. If you're a doctor's office and one of your core competencies was treating patients on site, you need to maybe look at pivoting to telemedicine.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe Vern Harnish speaks about a woman that is a very good yoga practitioner that had a very large studio that went online and now is doing 90,000 followers at $9 per month using her core strength and capability of yoga and helping that way. And one other quick anecdote that I learned just recently, but back in World War II, Steinway pianos, if you've ever known anybody that had a piano, the odds are it could have been a Steinway. But during World War II, not everybody was buying a piano, as you can imagine. Things were tough. But they actually took their core competency in designing and building quality pianos, and they created a miniature version that was small enough that it could be parachuted down to the troops so that the troops could have entertainment when they were camped out. So it's amazing the type of pivots we can consider, but you need to focus on understanding your core competency first.
That's a great, my mother is a piano teacher, and we did have a Steinway piano at home, so it's the Rolls Royce of pianos. Um, the other thing that obviously the COVID crisis may have done is exposed some weaknesses in various companies, and so what should companies be doing right now to sort of limit those weaknesses, or perhaps using this time to address some of those weaknesses and maybe either eliminate them or just sort of figure out how do we pivot in order to have fewer weaknesses in our marketplace.
Yeah, that's a really thoughtful question, Eugene. I think what happens is when times are good, we have a tendency to not deal with the weaker stuff. You don't need to. There's so many good things happening, revenues, profits, clients. But I think in a time like now, the silver lining is you can't afford to allow a weakness to fester. So I see companies that are shedding weak product lines. I
Hmm.
see companies that are dealing with business models that were maybe weak online versus takeout. I see companies that are strengthening cash positions that maybe before they didn't think about the need to have as much internal cash, and now they're building cash hoards so that they can have more resiliency, maybe be more respectful of banking relationships that could change if numbers don't increase. I've also seen people get better at strengthening inefficient processes. Maybe they were weak at collecting cash, and now they have to put an emphasis on strengthening their AR or collections capability. But I think at the end of the day, it is not a luxury, it's a necessity that you're working on all these weaknesses to make sure they don't become your downfall.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, strengths and weaknesses are things that are internal to your organization. If we now focus externally, what are companies doing, or what should companies be doing to sort of identify the external opportunities, or to identify the trends that are sort of resulting from this COVID crisis that they might be able to take advantage of when we move through this?
Yeah, I think the first thing I try and do with my clients is broaden the lens of what they're considering trends. Think of it, we use the pestle analysis model, something I also got from grad school. But think of the trends and think of the categories you want to consider. The first one in pestle is political. So what's happening in the environment? We know we're watching Washington right now. Look at the economy itself. What are the specifics behind that? Think about the societal or social implications of social distancing and remote. Think about the technological aspects of the trends. The people are working virtual. People are working with technologies and Internet of Things. And then you have to also think of the environmental issues. And then lastly, legal. And by taking each category with your team, assessing the trends and movements, positive or negative, you'll start to create some frameworks to consider what I think are good strategic pivots. So if your company is unencumbered right now, which would be rare, then you may not need to do this. But for the ones that are having challenges, there's 5 different pivots that I can just think of that one type of product or service to another. The other one is a business model pivot. These are tougher because obviously you have a lot of organizational design, resource, domain experience, but you may have to do that if your current business model is not working. Market pivot, switching from a focus on saying serving small, medium businesses to maybe now dealing with only enterprise companies because they may be the only one using your products today. And then ultimately, offer pivots, things with pricing, the way you're promoting. Do you need to do some things initially for free to get in the door when before you would charge? And then lastly, cultural pivot. Sometimes you have to consider the collective philosophy, mindset, and behavior of your company. And if that's not working, If you think of Microsoft, when Satya Nadella came in, he did a cultural pivot to that of a learning organization. And in scaling up, we're all about, if you want to 10x the company, you have to 10x the people. And if you've been in a culture that hasn't been employee development oriented, you may need to look at a cultural shift to be prepared to deal with that. And then lastly, let me give you some examples of pivots that have happened in the scaling up client world. And these examples are coming from all over the globe. We had an aerospace plastics manufacturing firm that pivoted to create face shields. We had an interior design firm that was doing home designs, consumers, that pivoted now to do home office designs, creating movable walls, partitions, taking advantage of that trend. We had an office furniture and design company that pivoted to now buying used office furniture at really, really discounted prices in anticipation of a need for discounted workstations as we're changing to a different office environment. We then had a security firm in the UK that pivoted from putting personnel in pubs and nightclubs for security, and they're now managing grocery markets and festivals for social distancing. So that's just a few examples of great entrepreneurs that have looked at pivots to make their company viable.
I know we sort of started out by saying that a SWOT or a sweat analysis is something that most companies and most coaches will have their coaching clients do once a year. How often should companies now be reevaluating their strengths, their weaknesses, those opportunities and trends as they continue to navigate sort of these very uncertain waters while we're still in the middle of this COVID crisis?
Yeah, so just in a traditional working environment, we would do every quarter a SWOT review, but our lens would only be about a year out, and annually would go about 2 or 3 years out. But right now, this is still evolving weekly. And with a lot of instability, we recommend that you may need to be looking at this weekly or minimally monthly with your team until you get to a sense of greater stability. But I've never seen the rate of accelerating change happen so quickly in my 30 years. And that's why this exercise is so important for your team right now.
Herb, the question that I ask everyone that comes on the Daily Dose of Advice, what is the number one piece of advice that you are giving your coaching clients right now?
Yeah, so I think I have a few. Number one, what does your client really need now? Get speaking to them, understand that what you may have provided may not be directly what they need. And a great tip is to take the SWOT exercise and do a SWOT on your client and act like you're walking in their shoes, and where within their SWOT could you be part of their opportunity or help solve one of their threats. Secondly, I think you need to have more frequent contact with your clients, albeit maybe shorter time span because they don't have a lot of extra time, but because of the changing environment, you need to be speaking with them more often. Thirdly, you need to be considering strategy pivots, because if revenues and profits are not coming online, you can't wait at those 5 things we covered earlier. And last but not least, you need a person in the company dedicated to be looking at your cash flow and to be working with the government SBA programs any way possible, I know in the United States, to make sure you get the type of funding and support that your business deserves. I wish you all well, and I know we can get through this together. And Eugene, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me today.
Herb, it's always a pleasure to speak to you and hear your wisdom and your insight, given all of your years of experience. If you'd like to learn more about Herb and his coaching practice, please check out aspiregrowthadvisors.com. Again, if you'd like to learn more about Align, please check out aligntoday.com. And we hope that you will join us for our next Daily Dose of Advice. Till then, thank you so much, and I hope you make it a great day.
Thank you. Be well.